What's up guys, my name is Daniel. I draw cars and turn them into 3D prints using Hue Forge, and I also do tutorials on Hue Forge for all of you. Today I want to show you guys something really cool that a lot of people have done, but a lot of people still have questions on and still don't know how to do.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
We're going to talk about hybrid Hue Forges today. What do I mean by hybrid Hue Forge? I mean we are literally taking a traditional 3D model and slapping it onto a Hue Forge, or the reverse, we're going to take a Hue Forge and slap it onto a functional 3D print. This way that we can add beauty to those functional prints. This is a very common topic of discussion in the Facebook groups and in the Discord, so I wanted to make a video to show you how you can do this in your slicer and how you can add that customization to your 3D prints. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Let's get into it. So we are going to start with putting a Hue Forge onto a functional design. This is a box that I found over on MakerWorld. I will put a link to it in the description. So currently the lid for this box is face down so that, you know, if you have a fancy build plate or whatever, you'll get that design or that pattern onto the top of the box, so it might look a little bit better. But here, you know, we want to add our own designs to it. So what we would need to do is, we'll come over to this plate. We need to flip it, so we'll lay it on its face. That way it's flipped over. Now when we do this, we are going to have to add support to this model, but that's okay. Not a lot of support for this. Now we will bring our Hue Forge over to the same plate, and we are going to hit Control on our keyboard, and we are going to select both items, and we are going to merge them. Now if we come over here to the objects, you will see that we have an assembly. We have the original lid, and we have my design. Now what we need to do is, while they're assembled, we need to move the Hue Forge up so that it is on top of the design itself. I'm going to make this red just so that I can see it a little bit easier while I'm positioning my Hue Forge in place. So let's bring this down. Now, if you need to scale these Hue Forges, you're more than welcome to. For my design, I don't, but if you need to, in scale, all you have to do is you have to turn off uniform scale, and then you can adjust your X and Y. You don't want to touch your Z, but X and Y will, you know, shrink it down the ways that you need to. If you adjust the Z, it's going to mess up your Hue Forge, it's going to mess up your swaps. Okay, so now that we have our design, the next step is going to be, we need to click on our assembly, we need to right click, and then we will need to add a height range modifier. We are going to print the box lid at 0.2 layer heights, that way it doesn't take forever. And then once it gets to our Hue Forge on the top of the box, that's when we'll bring it down to that 0.08 layer height for this model, or 0.04 layer height, whatever the case may be for your Hue Forge. So that way, like I said, we're not printing it forever at 0.08, and it's not taking us forever and a day to print this design out. So here we need to bring it up. I know that my Hue Forge starts at about 14 millimeters and it goes to about 16 millimeters, and you can see that there's a visualization to show you where it's going. Actually, it might be a little bit lower. Let's go to 13. That's a little bit better. So now everything in between these two ranges, the green box and this clear box, that's all going to be printed at 0.08 layer height. Now that we have the height range modifier set up so that like everything in between is going to be printed at Hue Forge layer heights, we'll click on that modifier. You can see here you've got your layer heights, your infill density, and your wall loops. We're going to bring it down to 0.08 for this particular model, and then we'll ignore this, and then we will come here and we will bring it to 100% infill density, and then we will bring this down to 0. So now everything in between this range is going to print just like our Hue Forge, whereas everything below will print, you know, like standard settings that you want for your box. So let's go ahead and we will slice it. Now we are going to take our swap file. So you can see here that we start with black, and then at layer 10 or 0.88, that's when we'll swap to red. Here we're going to have to do a little bit of math. Not much, but if you come down, it should be around 12 that we start our Hue Forge. You can see here. Now if we come up to 12.88, that is where we will do our first color swap. Here's something that I forgot to mention. You can't do multicolor printing and Hue Forge printing. So because right now the Bamboo Slicer thinks that we have two separate color models, thinks that we're going to do multicolor printing, it is, you can see it by the prime tower, it won't let us do our change filament command. So what we need to do is we need to make that box black again. And now we will slice it one more time. Now you can see that both the Hue Forge and the plate are the same color. At 12.88, we can change filament to red. So now let's go back to our document, and you can see at 1.2 we will swap to yellow. So that means at 13.2 we'll swap to yellow. Bring it up. Now we've got 1.28, we'll swap to white. So 13.28, we will swap to white. Now we have our Hue Forge stacked on top of a functional print. It's saying that we have some floating areas. That's because we didn't add any supports yet, so I can go ahead and do that. Let's go over to global, add some supports. So now this thing is good to go to the printer just as is. I will print this out and show you what it looks like at the end, but this is how you can add a Hue Forge to a functional print. It's very simple, very easy to do. It's just there hasn't been any real tutorials out there for it, so I figured I'd show you guys how to do it. Now let's do the reverse. We're gonna add a 3D model, a traditional 3D model, to a Hue Forge. We've got this glass Hue Forge, which is the background, it's shattered glass. And then I've got this car model over here. This will also be linked in the description. What we need to do is we need to cut this in half, and then we need to combine it with this background to create that 3D look where it's coming out of the picture. So in Bamboo Studio, all you have to do is come up to the cut function, and then you can rotate the cut, and you can see the plane rotating. That is where it's cutting. And let's give it a little bit of character. We can maybe make it look like it's coming out in a diagonal. We can use the yellow to move this around, and then we will perform the cut. Now the cut, it's going to cut it into two different pieces. We've got the rear of the car and we've got the front of the car. We're going to use the rear of the car so it looks like it's driving in. So we will delete the front of the car, and now we've got something like this. We want to make sure that it's lined up where we want it. You can also scale this if you want to, like so. Maybe we want it a little bit bigger so that it covers it a little bit more. And then what we need to do is we need to do the same thing that we did in the last one, which is we need to hold control on the keyboard. We have the car selected, and we will select the Hue Forge. Now we will merge those together. Now this is an assembly. So since it is an assembly, we need to take the car, we're going to lift it up just a hair. And now something important to bring up, if you had like a 3D model that you wanted multicolor and the Hue Forge, that's just impossible. You have to pick one or the other. You can only do swap by layer, or you can only do multicolor printing, like multiple swaps per layer. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. If I wanted this car to be different colors, I would actually have to physically paint like the wheels or something along those lines. So now we're going to have to do the height range modifier again. We will do the height range modifier for the car this time. So let's go to our assembly. We will add the modifier. And now we can set up where we need that modifier. So the described text of this glass Hue Forge shows us that the max depth is 2.2 and actual depth is 2.4. So that means that we can set in our height range modifier to 2.4 starting and then upwards for the rest of the car. So let's go ahead and do that. We will set this to 2.4, top end to about 50 millimeters, and you can play around with this just to figure out what range you need this for. So now in our height range modifier, we will set it up the way that we want it to. So we will do 0.2 layer heights. We're gonna do 10% infill, maybe 2 wall loops. So now once we're done with slicing the Hue Forge, the Hybrid Hue Forge, you can see if I drag this down, you can see that we have a normal amount of infill on the inside, and then it's 100% infill on the bottom. So now we need to do our color swaps. So let's grab this. It says at layer 6 or 0.96, we'll swap to blue gray. At layer 6, 0.96, I'm gonna just swap to this dark gray that I already have loaded so I don't have to reslice this whole thing. And then we have 1.28, we swap to gray. Swap to gray. And then 1.76, we'll swap to white. Now, if we slice it again, what's going to happen is the car itself is going to be white. Now, like I said, if you wanted to do this hybrid Hue Forge and you wanted multiple colors, that's impossible. But you can still swap the color so that this is not the topmost color of your Hue Forge. So like I have the red already loaded up. So let's go down to where the hybrid starts, so about layer 14. And we will swap that to red. Now if we slice it, You can see that the car is now red. You can see that there's red on top of this. We don't want that. So let's go here and we'll swap to red, 2.6. And that should take care of our issue there. There we go. So now we have a red car going into some glass. Like I said, you'll have to paint the wheels to make this a certain color and the windows. But still, that is functionally a hybrid HueForge. So let's go ahead and we'll print them out, and then I will show you what they look like at the end. So now we are done with printing, and this is the first design. This came out amazingly. This is the box with the lid that has my design on it. And then we also have the car, the little toy car driving through the glass. So this is a really cool way to add some flair to your 3D designs or your HueForges. Whatever the case may be, get creative with it. Please feel free to ask questions in the comments if you have any. And if this helped you in any way, shape, or form, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I will see you in the future.